Hey guys, it's Logan again. Welcome back to another YouTube tutorial, and this is another video in the series where I'm trying to teach you to be a computer scientist and game maker. So if you haven't watched it already, go back and watch the previous two videos to know kind of how memory works and how data is stored in memory, so you could be ready to talk about arrays. Okay, so we've already kind of talked about variables, and a variable, for example, if I create something called my health, and I'm just in some arbitrary object that I put in a game maker and I placed in a room. So if you want to catch up, just make an object. It doesn't have to have a sprite or anything, and plop it in your room, and then I'm in the create event, and that's all. So if we make a variable called my health and we assign it to 100, we can edit the value of this variable with, let's say, my health minus equal 1, and that's going to bring us down to 99, or we can use my health minus minus. That's going to bring us down by 1. We can also use minus minus my health, and that's going to bring us down by 1 as well. All these do the same thing, and there's also my health equals my health minus 1, which again is the same thing. There's 4 different ways to do this. These have their own uses. They're inline, what do you call it? Increments and or decrements. You can also use plus plus here. And what I mean by inline is you can use them in functions and in conditional statements. And I'll show you that later on, don't worry about it. But it's another way you can use to subtract or add 1 to your value. Okay, so that's one way that variables can be used. And we're here to talk about arrays though. Okay, so what is an array? Well, an array is a set of variables. So if we wanted to make an inventory system, right? And we didn't use arrays, and we had, let's say, 5 slots that we could have, right? And we could have an object in each slot. Well, we could use something like, let's say slot 1 equals sword, okay? Slot 2 equals potion, and I missed a quote here. Slot 3 equals armor, I don't know. Slot 4 equals, what other thing? Bracelet. I don't know what those are called. I'm sorry, guys. Bracelet. And then slot 5 equals knee pads. I don't play a lot of RPGs anymore. Our knee pads. Okay, so we have these different items that we could place in our slots. And let's say, let me change something. Let's say we replaced our bracelet with another instance of armor, right? So now we have 2 different armors in our list here, okay? Well, what if we wanted to cycle through these and see how many armors that we had, right? So in order to do that, we'd have to do if slot 1 equals armor, then we can increment amount of knee pad, or amount of armor plus equal 1. So we increment the amount of armor that we have by 1. And in this case, this wouldn't be true because slot 1 is not equal to armor, it's equal to sword, and we'd have to write this for all of them. If slot 2 equals armor, then we would have to do this again. I guess we could use an OR statement. We could use OR. This means OR, by the way. The double dash, you might be using this, but in most languages, the double vertical dash is OR. Slot 2 equals armor, and you can see where this is going. I would have to write slot 3, slot 4, slot 5 until we've written out all of these. Now, this isn't too hard to do in this case, but what if we had 25, 50 slots? This would get really repetitive just to see how much armor that we have, right? And actually, we couldn't do the OR because then this would only execute one time. We'd actually have to write separate if statements for every single slot. Okay, and that's a little bit cumbersome and a little bit repetitive. This is where arrays come into play. Okay, so I'm going to keep this code up here, but you don't have to have it. So what is an array? Well, we know from previous videos that these are stored somewhere in memory, some address in memory, some box in memory, right? So our memory manager finds a box, and I'm going to kind of comment and draw this out. and it says address. I'll just name this address 100, and it says in address 100, string's a little weird because it has to store one character basically in a separate address. So this S would be in address 100, and go watch the previous video to kind of see how that works. But you'll see that a string takes up multiple lines of memory, but just for ease of writing, I'm actually just going to do slot. We could say 100 through 105, or actually 104 equals represents sword, the sword string, right? And we'll say 105 through how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 110. 110 equals potion. And the reason why it's not 111 plus 6 is because it's inclusive on 105. So 105 is included, so you add 5 and then you count the 105 as well. So that's 6 positions in memory that is storing potion, right? Okay, this is kind of taking too much explanation, but you get the point, is that each one of these is stored somewhere in memory, and it's not necessarily guaranteed that they don't relate to each other. The position in memory don't. So what if we stored this and then we went to store this, but it had to find somewhere else? Our memory, it had to find somewhere else to store it because maybe address 105 was taken, right? So then it had to go to 120. And it went to 125, 125. So this is the address that potion's stored at, and it has no relation whatsoever to sword. So there's no way we can go from slot 1 and then tell GameMaker, hey, slot 2 is related to slot 1 somehow. Can you grab slot 2 for me? And this will kind of make more sense when I describe kind of arrays a bit more. So let's go ahead and bring in the array concept. So the array concept is that you have a list, and now we can do slot, and you initialize an array in GameMaker just by using like this, the braces. So you have some built-in slots. You have, like, in your script, you have argument. You can use 0 like this. Actually, you can use argument 0 like that as well. Or you have like your alarms are also arrays that you index, just like this. That's another type of array. You have like your views and all that stuff are arrays. So let's go ahead and build this, but in using arrays. So we're just going to move the numbers to the back. And with arrays, they start at index 0, remember? Just like this is 0 inclusive. This is 0 inclusive, and that means 0 is included in your count. So let's go ahead and write this down. So we'll write sword, and then let's go down. Slot 1 equals potion. Slot 2 equals armor. We're just doing the exact same thing that we did above, just with arrays. Slot 3 equals armor. Slot 4, which is going to be the final one, equals our great, awesome knee pads. Alrighty. So what did this do in memory? Well, in virtual memory, which is different from physical memory, don't worry about that. It tries to find, in general, it works different. It's not always sequential in memory, but in general it does. So what it tries to do is it says, hey, we need 4 slots for these, okay? Let's find somewhere in memory that we could have space to store 4 of these sequentially. So one after another. So it wouldn't skip a space like this because it sees that all these are related because of this. These variable names are not related. Even though they're related to us, to the computer, these are not related. But to the computer, these are all related, right? So the computer wants to relate these for us so we can easily, from being at the beginning slot, we can easily find the rest of them. And I'll show you kind of in memory. So this would be like, I'm going to pretend that strings just take up 1 byte right now, which they totally don't. But let's just say they take up 1 byte, and we're going to start at address 100. Okay, then it puts our sword at address 100, our sword string at 100. And then at 101, so it found somewhere that it could store all these sequentially. Even if it doesn't store them sequentially, it stores them in a way that it can easily reference from one to another. They're kind of linked in a way. So it stores the potion at 101. But in general, you could think of it like this. And at 102, it stores the armor. Oh, and then at 103, it stores more armor. These are addresses. Remember, address 103. And if you don't know what I'm talking about by addresses, go watch my memory video. that is prior to this. And then address 104, we're going to say knee pads. Now, you can see that these are related, right? So how do these relate? Well, you could actually say, look at the numbers. We could say that our memory manager and our program knows that this initial slot index, so slot index 0, our initial slot starts at 100, right? Now when we pass in other indexes, so we pass in 1, it says go to our original slot and then go up 1, and it goes up 1. Go to our original slot and go up 2, and it goes up 2. Go to our original slot and go up 3. So it goes to our original slot, which slot refers to. Just slot would refer to our original slot. And not necessarily in GameMaker, but in other languages you could actually use this without. There's ways to use it without, and you can actually increment where you're kind of getting out of the scope. So I'm going to come back, but you can actually change where you're indexing at from your just original variable name. Okay, so then we have, yeah, you got the point. So these are all linked, and our program knows that these are linked because we indexed them with our braces. So what advantage does this give us? Well, let's do the same thing that we wanted to do here, but I'm going to use a for loop. If you don't know what a for loop does, don't worry about it. But you can see we can use these indexes as integer values now, right? So if I want to grab armor, the value armor, I would use slots. So let's store the string armor in a new variable. Let's call this new string equals slots. Okay, and which one do we want to pick? Let's pick 1. Now it equals potion. New string equals potion. All we have to do is change this value to 2 or 3, and now our new string equals armor because it's indexing slot 3 now. We can actually pass in a random. So let's do a random, and we have to use round because random can return a floating point number. So a not integer. Wait, someone told me there's a random I is it I random? Okay, I random, awesome. So I random actually returns an integer, basically a rounded value of what random would have. And yeah, I didn't use this. I've used GameMaker for 12 years. I didn't know about this until like last week. So GameMaker has I random, and you give it a maximum value of 4, which is our maximum value we want to go. And now it'll choose one of these at random. Is there any way you could do that with this? I mean, there's ways that you can, but is there any way that you can write this one line and get this result using the old array way? Absolutely not. That is the power of arrays. And you can use these. So let's do our search. Let's search and see how much armor we have. We would write a for loop. And if you don't know what a for loop does, don't worry, I'm going to make a tutorial on loops as well. We're going to use we're going to set I initially to equal 0, and we're going to continue everything inside of this loop until I is equal to 4. So we're going to say, as long as I is less than 4, we're going to execute the code. So when I becomes equal to 4, this condition no longer is met and it exits out of the loop. Because we don't want to go to slot 5, index 5, because it doesn't exist and it'll throw us an error. Okay, and then we're going to increase I by 1. After this loop, the code in here executes, I is going to be increased, then it's going to come up here and do this check again right here. Then it's going to do the code, I is going to increase, and it's going to do this check until I is 4. All right, so now we just do if slot, and we can pass in I. If slot is equal to armor, then we can do amount of armor plus equal 1. That easy. This does what we wanted to do up here. This I is going to change. Remember, we can index these just by changing the integer values. So we're going to start at 0. So it's going to say, is sword equal to armor? Nope. It's going to go to 1. From the next loop iteration, is sword equal to potion? Nope. So this isn't getting executed. Then it goes to 2. Is armor equal to armor? Yep. It's going to add 1. And then it's going to go to 3. Is armor equal to armor? Yep. It's going to add 1. Is knee pads equal to armor? Nope. So it's not going to add 1 in that case. So let's go ahead and delete our top part, and we can actually try this out. let's use, we can just initialize amount of armor up here. I'm just going to use var amount of armor. So when you use var, and I'm going to set equal to 0, var is initializing this. You see how it turns like a light yellow. After the step event or the create event ends, this amount of armor variable is going to be released from memory. If you watch my previous videos, remember, if we did this, when our instance is created, an integer or a value is stored in memory, like a 16-byte value is stored in memory. And that memory is not cleaned up. It's not available for anything else to use in your computer until this instance is destroyed or the game ends. So when you use var, we're saying, hey, when the script ends, go ahead and erase that from memory so we can kind of clean that memory up and use it for later on in our game. So that's why I'm using var. And we're doing amount of armor plus equal 1. And now let's just show the message of the value of amount of armor at the end of this. And we have to turn the amount of armor into a string. So we're using amount of armor inside of the string function. The string function right here, again, turns this integer, double value, whatever it is, into a string that it can display to us. So we hit play. And you should see that it should say 2. There you go. So it shows that we have 2 of armor. We can change this to let's say sword, and it should display 1 when we run the game. And as you see, it's just cycling through our indexes, and you can have hundreds of these. Okay. And if you want to pre-initialize the size of an array, do they have any array create function? Okay, so they do have an array create size. If you're using the new game maker, you can also use slot. I don't know the exact syntax, to be honest. I believe it's, I don't want to tell you wrong. I don't know the exact syntax. I haven't actually used it yet. I've just used 2D arrays recently. But let's say you wanted to initialize 100 of these, but with the same value. So we'd write another for loop, I equals 0, I is less than 101, I plus plus. So we're going to loop through this 100 times. And then actually less than 100, that's going to give us 100 because we start at 0, 0 inclusive. So we just do slots. I equals whatever you want, an initial value, okay? And that will create 100 slots that you can then assign things to, okay? And if you don't do this, check this out. Let's see. If I try to access, if I change this value to 5 right here, and I try to go, I obviously don't have anything indexed at 5. Then it will try to access a value that we don't want to access. Oh, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We should have had 5 in the beginning, sorry, because we have 5 values here. I wrote it wrong. Y'all are probably yelling at me. If I go to 6, we'll get an error. And there we go. It says variable index out of range. You're going to get this error a lot when you're working with arrays. It's just going to happen. No matter how good you are as a programmer, I get the error. It's going to happen eventually. And when you get this error, now you can know where it comes from. It's because some array is not initialized. Sometimes you'll go negative. You'll try to go to like a -1, or maybe you haven't even initialized your array set at all. And maybe sometimes you're trying to go to one that hasn't been initialized, one of the indexes that haven't been initialized yet. So be sure that you're initializing your arrays and that you're keeping track of them. And when you get that error, now you know where it comes from. And I want to see actually what happens. I haven't experimented with this. If I give slot 8 and I try to go to slot 9, is this going to give me an error? No, it's not. So I don't know exactly how this works, but I guess you can initialize an array by just giving it a size that you want right here. And I wonder if it sets all those to, sorry, I should know this, to be honest, guys, but I've been programming in Unity a lot lately. Okay, I'm going to see, and then I'll tell you what it's doing if it works. 0. I don't know what it is initializing our other array indexes at this point. I wonder what value it's giving them. Let me print out the value of each array. So I'm going to use show message. You're kind of experimenting with this with me right now. Don't worry. slot I. So I'm going to print out the value of each slot. I want to see what, it might just be an empty string that it gives. 0, 0. Okay, so it just initializes everything to 0 right off the bat. No big deal. So if you actually, you could do this, and this is going to create an array that has 0, the index is 0 through 100 initialized, but all the initialization is going to be 0. So your default value for all those is going to be 0. So slot index 0 is equal to the integer 0, and that's what you're going to get if you do this. So that's another way to initialize arrays. If you just want them defaulted at 0, no big deal. All right, I've taken up enough of your time. I hope you learned something about arrays in this video, and if not, let me know so I can do better in the next one. We'll be talking about 2D arrays. Be looking out for my top-down shooter series that I'm going to be making. We're going to be going over some algorithms like breadth first search. It's a graph traversal algorithm, and it's going to be some really complicated and cool stuff, but I'm going to give you some introduction of stuff here. Also, go check out my platformer series that I'm working on currently. It's really good. It has a lot of good coding techniques and coding practices in it, and I'm still working on that. I'm kind of stuck at a point right now in it, so that's why I haven't updated a video in a little while. So anyways, enough of your time wasted. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And if you did, please leave a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.